The last words he said to me before I walked out were, "You're overreacting." That was after I'd shown him the photograph. His hand on her waist, lips brushing her ear, in a hotel lobby he swore he'd never been to. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just slid my wedding ring onto the table between us, watched it spin, and said, "You'll regret thinking I'm a woman who overreacts." Then I left our polished house, the one that smelled like deceit wrapped in vanilla candles, and drove until the city lights disappeared. Backstory set up, then versus now. When I met Daniel, I thought he was a safe harbor. I'd been 25, too hopeful for my own good, and he'd looked at me like I was the only thing worth noticing in a crowded room. We built a life. Sunday mornings tangled in sheets, whispered plans about the future, the kind of love you imagine will carry you into old age. But that love aged faster than I did. It turned brittle, like old paper, ready to burn at the first spark. Discovery of betrayal. The first sign was his phone. Once left everywhere, now always face down. Passcode changed. Then came the business trips, the late nights, the shirts smelling faintly of perfume I didn't wear. I told myself not to imagine things. But then, the message. I'd been reaching for a charger on his desk when his screen lit up. One sentence burned itself into my brain. "I can still taste last night." My hands had gone cold. My pulse stayed steady. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Shift in mindset, the plan. I didn't confront him, not yet, because fury without strategy is just noise, and I wanted silence. The kind that comes before an execution. For weeks I played my role, the loyal wife, the oblivious one. But behind closed doors, I copied every financial document, memorized every account number. I dug deeper, found the shell company he'd hidden, the apartment lease under another name. I contacted a lawyer, the kind who could dismantle a man's life in clean, legal steps. I even befriended the other woman online, without her knowing who I was. Information is a sharper weapon than rage, and I was collecting it like ammunition. The move, remote town, fresh start? When I finally filed for divorce, I didn't tell him where I was going. I sold my car, packed my life into 2 suitcases, and moved to a remote coastal town where the air smelled of salt and the nights were too quiet to lie to yourself in. I rented a small cottage near the cliffs. It was supposed to be a place to breathe again. But then, I noticed him. A man always watching from the cafe across the street. At first I thought it was paranoia, a leftover symptom of living with Daniel's lies. Until one night, I caught him taking photographs of my cottage. The discovery in the town. I followed him, down narrow streets, past the harbor, to a house that looked as forgotten as the people in it. Inside, through a cracked window, I saw my husband, Daniel, here, with the same woman from the photograph, laughing like the past months had been nothing but a game. It hit me then. He hadn't just cheated, he'd followed me. And worse, the property he'd leased in my name was in this very town. A setup. He wanted me isolated, cornered, maybe even ruined. The new plan, revenge refined. I stopped thinking of myself as his victim. I became the hunter. I let them think I didn't know. Instead, I invited Daniel for closure, told him I wanted to leave things amicably. I suggested we meet at the old lighthouse by the cliff, the one the locals warned about because the rocks below could break you in seconds. Meanwhile, I sent every piece of evidence I'd collected, financial fraud, hidden assets, messages to underage escorts, directly to the police and his corporate board. By the time he would leave that meeting, he'd have nowhere to run. Climax, the confrontation. The wind at the lighthouse was vicious that night, tearing at my hair, my coat. Daniel arrived with that smug half-smile, the one he wore when he thought he'd already won. "So this is where you've been hiding," he said. "No," I replied, stepping closer to the edge. This is where I've been planning. I told him everything, not with shouts, but with a calm that made his smile fade. The bank accounts, the apartment, the photographs, the fact that the police were, at that very moment, unlocking the doors to his office. He tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back, just far enough that his hand closed on nothing but air. "Do you want to know the best part?" I asked. "What?" his voice cracked. "You don't get to see me break." By morning, the town was buzzing with news. Daniel arrested, assets frozen, his mistress gone before sunrise.